So, right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Right, AI, sovereignty in Europe, from edge to data centers to gigafactories, compute in Europe is so important right now. Do we want to rely on compute from other countries, from outside European borders? No, we do not. So, how do we fix that? To moderate this panel, Dr. Andreas Braun, Managing Director of AI, PwC Luxembourg. He's been working on technology innovation for 20 years, spending the first part of his career at Fraunhofer in Germany, where he led a research group on biometrics and was a principal investigator at the National Cybersecurity Center, Athene. Over to you, sir. Loud round of applause, everybody, for our next panel.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I'm welcoming everybody to this excellent panel with a great group of speakers that we have today. We have a lot of them, which is good because we will get many different viewpoints, but also I will be very strict on timing. So you have been pre-warned. But first, a quick question to the audience. So when we are discussing the topic of AI sovereignty, we hear a lot about that it's maybe already too late for Europe to be there. Raise of hands, who thinks that Europe is already too late when it comes to AI and AI sovereignty? Okay. I see that we have a very optimistic audience, and I think that our speakers here might probably be able to also validate that when we are thinking about it. Given that we have so many, I will do the introduction. So I introduce to you also José Cela, the Director of Computer Application at the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, which houses the Mare Nostrum supercomputer, HPC already today. I also introduce Alberto Blanco, the Global Director for Product and Innovation at Telefónica, who has been working already a lot on cybersecurity, cloud and AI and advanced security technologies, and will be able to give us a view on that. I also introduce Vieville, Sales Director at Axelera AI, an AI startup hardware company who is trying to compete with NVIDIA, and I hope will overtake them soon in market capitalization. We have also Andrien Becue, an AI and cybersecurity expert at Thales, who has led many research, technology and innovation activities across many European countries and has contributed to award-winning European projects in cyber attack detection and security simulation. And finally, also Alain Wilmouth. He's the founder of 2CRSI, which is, let's say, now a publicly listed company that builds actually the data centers that are moving forward the AI revolution in Europe and beyond. And as the first discussion round, I would like to start, let's say, what actually defines AI sovereignty in your domain. And I would like first, Adrien, to talk from your perspective. What does AI sovereignty mean for you?
Thanks a lot. So first of all, I should introduce a little bit of my work because I'm in a specific field of application of AI. I'm a specialist of AI and cybersecurity. That means both cybersecurity of AI and AI application in cyber. And specifically cyber defense. I would say sovereignty in that context involves the control of the whole supply chain and the control of the whole life cycle of AI. And that means, of course, look at the life cycle from a machine learning, secure machine learning operations perspective, from early design to the dismantlement of AI-based systems. And from a technical perspective, it means from the data to the model and to the overarching system, including the hardware, which is one of the elements where we sort of have a disadvantage against some non-EU players. And so that means as a security guy, I have this principle that you're only as sovereign as your least sovereign piece in that supply chain. So that means that the four elements, data, hardware, model, and system should be under control.
I think that's also perfect to segue to Jean, who is very early in that stage. What is your view on this?
Well, from an Axelera standpoint, so the journey we have, and when you talk about silicon today in Europe, you have to see that the landscape of silicon have gone from 40% of global manufacturing in 1990s. Today, Europe is only at 8% of production of the overall supply of chips worldwide. So we've really lost a lot in terms of sovereign capability of production, and I'm just talking of one layer in the supply stack today, which is production of chips. I'm not talking about the people like us, Axelera, that are able to make a difference today compared to NVIDIA, AMD, and all the American chips that we know. So in other words, when you look at the stack, you have the design house, and then you have the foundry, and you have different layers to produce chips. So today, Axelera, we are talking about sovereignty because we're able to make a difference, have a production-ready chip for AI inferencing that is already grasping some market shares from our overseas competition, and that is already making a big impact when we talk about edge AI. So I think this is very big, spark of light for Europe to see that. I've heard a lot today of talk that's we're challenging, etc., but there is success. Now, the question is not about how we bring this success to life, is how we bring this life to become a big company like the NVIDIA, the AMD, and the Qualcomm. So Axelera can be part of this journey, I think.
Excellent. And maybe on who puts these chips into data centers? Alain, what is your view on this?
Yes, for our perspective, AI sovereignty means the ability to design, build, and deploy AI infrastructure at scale in Europe and in line with European values. It's true that for us, it's not only owning data and models, it's controlling the entire infrastructures. If Europe cannot build this infrastructure in time, this is really a big issue. For us, the real matters is execution. How quickly, how massively, and how sustainably, sorry for my English, we can deploy AI infrastructures on European soil. For TUSRSI, we are launching an initiative, it's called ACER Infrastructures. Sovereignty means that it's building a European backbone, a real focus on how Europe can beat our competitor in the world. It's not just depending on foreign infrastructures. We have really to deploy our own one.
And when maybe speaking then from the perspective of large telecommunications and IT companies, Alberto, what is your view on this?
So we are a telco, so the idea is always to see how can we help customers making the investments in a way that they can be efficient. So AI is going to be difficult for many companies because the amount of investments are going to be high and they don't even know exactly how much they are going to need them. So the way we're going to help them is by using telco edge nodes. So we are launching this year 17 of the first edge nodes. That means data centers very close to the data of the customers, connected very good connection to the 5G and the fiber. So you have the best latency possible from your data to the running GPUs. So the idea we have is to simplify the adoption of AI by taking the computation closer to the data, so data doesn't have to move out. That's the main idea of sovereignty, is controlling your data, so not moving data too far away from where it is. So that's one of the main areas of work for us in sovereignty. Of course, on top of those data centers, we have to put a stack of software and hardware, and we want to have it to be sovereign, because at the end, this is, as you mentioned before, a full stack. You can do only a part of it. If you forget about the rest, you have a big issue. So we solve the data residency, having the data close to the computation, but we have to work on the stack, and working like companies like Axelera and many other companies, we are trying to solve that puzzle.
Okay, and last but not least, José, as somebody who is, let's say, running a large AI infrastructure, what is your view on this?
Well, in centers like PwC, we are completely autonomous in terms of the software. All the software that we use to train the artificial intelligence or to generate synthetic data for this training is developed by us. The only thing that is not European in this chain is the hardware. We have hardware integrators in Europe, but we have not chip developers at the level of the US and Japan. Till we have not covered this step, obviously we'll never have autonomy. And I think the European Union has started an important initiative to develop European chips. And we expect in the Mare Nostrum 6 to have at least part of the chips designed and manufactured in Europe.
No, that is, I think, a very good point for, let's say, how we are moving forward with this discussion, because we've already discussed the topic of, let's say, lack of local hardware production, challenges also in data, but there's also, let's say, also the challenge of scale, that it's very complex when we are looking at the size of the IT companies, the size of the hardware companies, to compete with what we see in let's say, in the United States or in Asia. So what let's say, just to dig a bit deeper into those critical challenges, what do you see yourself as the biggest critical challenge to sovereignty? Maybe Jean, starting with you.
So I think for Europe, we're really good, or we put in place some SPVs that allows today financing some great innovations. And we see coming up a few startup or scale-up companies like Axelera that are delivering chips that are delivering already. So this is, for example, our chip, Metis, that today you can run computer vision, you can run a mini ChatGPT version on it directly already. This is great. But now the question is, the challenge is how to bring it to the next level, to bring it to production. And the TRL readiness of the chip is here. We are TRL 9 now. We get how to get into a technology readiness level 1 to 9 into a defense project in a short amount of time, because the life cycle and integration usually can take a couple of years. So how we shrink it down to 2 years, we finance this integration, etc. This is all the challenge I think we have today in the defense space.
That is, well, I'd say indeed true and a critical challenge, but there might also be, let's say, topics when it comes to cybersecurity. So, Adrien, what is maybe your view on this?
Okay, there are the technical challenges in terms of cybersecurity, and of course, some were highlighted in the morning sessions, and in particular, how we secure our models in terms of integrity against, for example, insertion of AI backdoors or data poisoning attacks and other evasion attacks. But I think this is not the main challenge. I mean, we have good people in Europe, skilled people. I think the main challenge is that we actually consider sovereignty on a national basis instead of considering it on a European basis. And we don't have the critical mass to really achieve something in AI with fragmented decision and with fragmented data. Not to talk about the fragmentation of the market itself. So I think this is fragmentation, the bigger problem. So it's an economic problem, not a technical problem. I would be more competent in solving the technical problem, but the main issue is this fragmentation. Luckily, there are some techniques that help work with it. For example, if you cannot exchange your data among member states, which happens every day, you can use federated learning techniques or other privacy preserving techniques that currently we achieve in R&D projects, and for some reason they don't pass the step to production.
So as someone who has worked in this, let's say, ecosystem of HPC and European projects for a long time, do you resonate with that view, José, or do you think that this, let's say, fragmentation or distribution of resources might also be an advantage?
No, for sure, fragmentation is not an advantage. And just see to another technological sector, aviation. What we do in aviation, we create Airbus. Airbus today has 50% of the commercial aviation market in the world. Why? Because it's a leader, it's a gigant, only comparable with Boeing. If we have not Airbus in Europe, Europe was disappear of the aeronautical sector. And electronic is the same. If we have not an Airbus in the electronic, we simply disappear. We cannot compete with NVIDIA, we cannot compete with Fujitsu, with these companies, if we have not a company of this size. And there is no one single country in Europe that by itself can have this size of company. So for sure, we need to create a company that is an aggregation of several European countries.
It's already a very interesting solution, but talking maybe also about somebody who is not yet a giant, but might strive to become one. Do you feel like that is also, let's say, the scale is a huge challenge, Alain?
Yes, the scale and the scaling is probably the greatest challenge today. The wanted is coming today from the positions of the crazy people in the world. Everybody heard about the Readiness 2030 or ReArm Europe programs, and without Trump, we can say it, nobody will do it today. And these oppositions make happen perhaps the dream of many of my team today, become perhaps tomorrow the Supermicro from Europe. The wanted of my company, but not only mine, a lot of other Europeans, electronic manufacturers, probably like the company of my neighbor, Thales, or many other ones, understanding today that without owning and operating the technology, the hardware, the software, the AI Gigafactory, the sovereignty is not existing. So, of course, I'm not pro-war, but the war is coming, and if we not collapse all together, you see here we have Spain, Italian, French, German people on the tables, on the stage, and probably in the future we have to collapse more and more together, not to make just like the AI Gigafactory project today is probably too much national and not enough Europeans one. But we have to speed up and make it less bureaucracy too.
So finally, closing this round, Alberto, what is your view on the biggest challenges that we're facing?
Well, I think we mentioned most of them. I mean, the challenge of AI in Europe, I think we will have to take more than 1 hour just to go through them, because it's a big topic, a complex topic, and with lots of uncertainty. So sometimes I always think about the crystal ball, is who really knows what's going to be in Europe. But one of the problems we are having is we have to define what sovereignty all the time. And that's not good. What I mean is, every time we have to define something, it means there is no a real need on the other side. If there is a real need, you don't have to define it. The need is very clear, is well defined, and you just try to solve it somehow. So us as a commercial company, when we try to discuss with customers, we don't have to define about that. Sovereignty is in that stage. It's not clear yet. And that means we are in a little bit still immature state. We need to go a little bit further, where clarity on what's the expectations from first public administrations, and secondly maybe regulated industries are about this. Until we have this clarity, we are just playing a very expensive game around sovereignty, which may take us to a wrong place. The wrong place could be Europe is just having a more expensive cloud than the rest of the countries. That I don't think is a good scenario. We may have maybe some flourishing companies around, but Europe is not leading the race because it's more expensive or less competitive in that space. So how we balance that is really important, but that's not happening yet. All these rules are not really happening yet. There is no clear strategy around sovereignty. Not a definition, of course, imagine a strategy. How all of this is going to be solved, what's the approach, and how can we get into the place we're going to be. So that goes to the demand loop that we have to break. At the end, we need to have somebody, which I think is the public administration, defining very well what they need exactly, Hopefully, in the following months, we will have some progress on that. I think 2 months ago in October, we have the framework sovereignty that explains for the first time some of the rules. I think it was very exciting to me to see. I don't know if you read all this paper with 8 specific areas of control for sovereignty. So for the first time, we start to see something that we can discuss about, and we can start discussing on solutions to that. But until we have this maturity, my feeling is we are in a very expensive game that I don't think is going to take us where we want.
No, but indeed, but this panel is not purely it is here to discuss on the challenges that we are having, but also to discuss on some of the potential solutions surrounding the strengths that Europe has. And there is no discussion that there is a lot of strengths in research when it comes to artificial intelligence. Of course, maybe not on the same level as the United States, but there is very strong research around it. There is very good knowledge about running these very high performance infrastructures for in HPCs, in AI, where the European facilities are competing with the best around the world. So there is a lot of building blocks there when we are talking about building a sovereign AI ecosystem. And just discussing what would be, let's say, potential points to consider when we are really trying to build the ecosystem that then supports a fully sovereign European AI agency. Or agenda, sorry. And maybe to start on this discussion round, José, what is your view on, let's say, the current strengths of the ecosystems and how to move this forward?
Well, in my opinion, the position of Europe in the ecosystem is not so bad. The European Union has started the initiative of the AI factories that are machines that are oriented for the private sector, for the companies, to help them to create the IA models. And I think, in my opinion, this is a good initiative to put hardware at the disposition of the companies. And now we have this initiative of the Gigafactories, that the idea is to create a cloud services in the same way that the US companies have. So probably this initiative will be enough. The problem for me is not the infrastructure, is the European market. The US companies has created this cloud and these gigafactories because they are able to exploit in the market these economical needs. The question is why there is not a European company that makes something similar to Amazon or the Azure cloud of Microsoft? This is the question. And if there is not this basis in the market, it doesn't matter what the politics does. This kind of infrastructures will be not success. Don't forget that today NVIDIA is the first company in the hardware manufacture GPUs. But they arrived to the GPUs of today because previously they produced GPUs for PC for the rendering of the video games. So these kind of markets of the commercial electronic, of the simple things like video games, are the real support of these giants in the technology.
So let's say, latching onto this, because let's say the ambition to build a cloud competitor often is in Europe discussed with, let's say, initiatives of large telecommunications companies, or at least in Germany, they have also building cloud solution. I'm sure Telefónica is, of course, also very active in this domain. So does that resonate with you? Is there the ambition to become cloud leader?
Well, that's part of my day is to discuss if we can get to the point to really be a competitive solution to hyperscalers. I can give you the answer is no. And I have to be very honest. The amount of investment they put on the table to create what they've done, I think is almost impossible to match. And maybe, we mentioned before, maybe it's too late to do it. It doesn't mean that that's necessary for most of the workloads, and that's the discussion we need to have. This is what we can call the long tail. No, the amount of things they do can be useful for some applications, but for most of the applications, the 80% of the things they do is to sell computing power, to sell storage, and to sell basic data, well, not basic, some kind of database or data management. This is the 50-80% of the consumption of the hyperscalers. AI is growing quite a lot in that space. All this long tail of 200 services they have is not that much used in most of the cases. So the only thing we had to do is to really find where we can compete and not to really try to imitate what they do. Secondly, and this is something that is not easy to say in this environment, which is we had to keep working with the hyperscalers. Sovereignty is not around pushing back and saying no cloud for anything which is not from Europe. That's not realistic, not only because of the functionality, it's the amount of talent in Europe which is already used and all the applications that are already connected to the hyperscalers. If you have a meeting with a customer who is already invested in one of those players, removing them from that environment to a new one is going to be a heart attack for them. It's going to be painful and a long process. So we have to understand this is going to be a process that we have to take, create sovereignty, but having the hyperscalers next to us because they are really doing moves around sovereignty. 2 years ago, they really did nothing. They said they were sovereign because they opened an office maybe in Germany. Now they really make some progress onto understanding what is the real needs, not in everything, but at least in privacy and autonomy. This is the areas that are really covering with solutions to solve that. So I think we cannot just push and say we are going to build a new Amazon. We have to combine all the technologies, understanding that not all of them will need to be in the same kind of environment.
Maybe then moving on to Jean, you. Let's say you probably are not planning immediately to compete with NVIDIA, but there are, let's say, different strengths or different areas where they are not very active, where you can find your potential success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for us, the journey is very interesting because inference is a word that probably 70% of you here never heard of, but you use every day when you use ChatGPT. And it's basically the art of sending out a question and getting an answer. This is inference. And when you use text-based model like GPT or when you use computer vision, everybody right now use a GPU from NVIDIA because this is the state-of-the-art infrastructure, but actually there is inference chips like us, and there is like 10 companies in the world that can do this kind of chip today. They are able to provide the performance needed to run ChatGPT with cost-effective, power-efficient infrastructure, and that's really our value proposition today. Of course, there will always be NVIDIA, and we will always work with NVIDIA, and we will be complementary in the sense that you will need a GPU to train models. But for the inference, that means the usage of AI, we have a solution today, and there was an acquisition last month from NVIDIA of a company called Grok for $20 billion US. This is a clear sign that they see that the trend is towards inference today, and I think this is something very interesting for the future and for European sovereignty, I would say.
And Adrien, how do you see the ecosystem, let's say, in your domain? Is it, there's like a bit of a feeling that in terms of cyber or the areas where Thales is operating, it's a bit more competitive and compared to, let's say, some certain, at least if we compare it to GPUs. Do you agree with that? And what do you see lacking in, or what do you see as potential improvements in the ecosystem from your perspective?
Well, cyber is hugely competitive indeed. It's also a market that, unlike the rest of AI for defense, is actually driven by the civil sector. And one lesson from the civil sector we have is that all successes require customer intimacy. This is true of systems in general, but it's even more true of AI-based systems because you learn from the data and you don't get the data without actually taking it from your user. In most cases, our users are in the defense sector are going to be military people, and here I can only advertise that we have stronger ties, stronger links between the military and the industry, because if we don't build that working ecosystem where we can work on their data and we can help them solve issues with AI which they don't solve today, or they have to purchase some untrusted AI to solve it, then we are not building this EU ecosystem for AI in defense. That is non-specific to cyber, but the lessons learned in cyber is that requirement for customer intimacy to just start the journey. Otherwise, you get locked into building something that will not actually effectively solve the user problems.
And as somebody who, let's say, by design has to integrate a lot of the ecosystem into a single offering, what is your view on this, Alain?
Yeah, for me today, I remember the first time I heard about AI Factory. It was Jensen, the CEO from NVIDIA, who talked us about that last year in 2024 in the GTC. And I was very surprised about the wording AI Factory. And he make it that in oppositions with data centers. And explain us that the new area is coming where we are not anymore to store data only, but we have to produce compute. And these new paradigms make really a big changement. In my mind, so roughly 2 years ago, I understanding that we have already forgot in Europe to produce the goods we are using every day. If we spoke about defense, you see all the troubles we have today by operating F-35 air flights, who are fully controlled by someone who is probably not so much our ally. And why? Why will we give all our sovereignty to other countries? Today, we are very proud, especially the president of my country is very proud to accept the investments of very huge US company. And as a public company, I go meeting a lot of investors every day. And I heard that 75% of the hyperscaler cash is coming from European investors. So why European investor will funding US company who will take at the end the future profit of a huge movements like the AI, who is probably the fourth revolutions on the world. And if we want to keep tomorrow a small part of the jobs created by the AI, we have to have a great mobilizations, and not just on the software, on also kind of things where we have already the skills, but really level like Axelera or other chip manufacturers. But also remember that tomorrow, perhaps Taiwan will be invaded by China. And if that is happening, US will be also have a big troubles. So we have to mobilize the money we have in Europe. What is one of the first skills from Europe? To get the money to invest in the productions of the good chips in Europe. We have the best chip machines manufacturer in the world. We have the best silicon in the world with Soitec. We have all the skill possible in Europe to make it possible.
And I think that, oh, you want to react to that, José?
But we have not the organization.
Exactly. It's just an organization. And probably we need a real government in Europe, if I can go forward. You know, we need something stronger as what we have today. We need it.
And I think that is, let's say, a good point to go into the final part of this discussion. After we heard a lot about the challenges that we face in even defining sovereignty, to see where are the gaps in Europe, but to also see where are the strengths. Maybe just since you were already having quite tangible suggestions, Alain, maybe I start with you again and we do the round over. What would be, to the policymakers and decision makers in this room, your one suggestion to, let's say, improve the situation on AI sovereignty in Europe?
We have to move from strategy to execution. We have to stop to thinking and making the things. At the end, having a lot of people who are just thinking, it's very good for very calm time, but all the military in the room will know it. At certain times, the moment is coming to action. And probably making just a simple example. In France, for the AI Gigafactory, we bought a site now to implement it very fast, 2026. Generally, when you spoke about having 100 megawatts somewhere in France, you need at least 3 to 5 years to get the permit. Just not because the company EDF is not able, it's a great company. It's just the bureaucracy behind that. It takes 3 to 5 years. How it's possible? In 3-5 years, all the big giants from US and China will take all the leads. We have an emergency plan. We need an emergency plan. Is excess power everywhere in Europe today. We sell 10% of the energy at negative price today. Why we should not go forwards by making the things more faster? That is probably the most important. And just one additional word. With Joseph here in the rooms, we have the wanted to really creating AI gigafactories, not one, but several in Europe. We try to help European other countries like Spain or probably Germany by providing sometimes, people say it's too expensive. It's not really expensive. We take the goal to go to the family office, so the richest family from Europe, who today invest a lot outside of Europe. They want to see the project owner to invest in their project, if the project is huge enough. If you come just to ask him some pennies, no chance. But here we are speaking of a project of few billion dollars, probably euros, sorry, few tens billion. You see, also in my speech, why we speak in English, in fact, at the end. Sorry.
Because it's an official EU languages that is understood by many. But okay. But Adrien, the next panel will be in German, as discussed, en français. Adrien, your one suggestion for an action.
I like the example of Airbus. I would support that. Perhaps one option is to have a consolidation of industry that is a policy-based consolidation, but it worked, so why not? And in the end, in Europe, we hardly do anything that is not policy-based, so let's consider it. Of course, the integration of also the public side and that an attempt to bring our armies and MODs on board of decisions when it comes to investment, like what the EU is doing with European defense funds and so on, is intensely needed, because at the moment these programs, they are a little bit out of ground. I even had to request special permission to exchange with my Ministry of Defense in executing European Defense Fund projects, and it was very difficult to have the agreement. So it means a lot how much our policy makers at European level really integrate the user into this virtuous loop of R&D and in the end, effective AI business. At the moment, this is something lacking clearly.
Jean, your one suggested action?
So from my standpoint, it's I think we're all aligned here in the room about one thing is build together. We always think about different agenda, but Axelera is a good example. In 20 years, we haven't done any competitive product from our American competitors. We're not Dutch, we're not Italian, we're not French, we're a European company. And we're able to bring the best talent from Europe to build the next generation AI chips. That's really what we have done for the past 4 years, and we're already showing and delivering. So that's number one, being together. Number two, how we finance it. When we go to the private sector today, the biggest challenge is how we finance the integration of a chip in my roadmap, because nobody gets fired when you use NVIDIA, of course. But if you use a startup or a scale-up, we're not anymore a startup, but it's a risk. We're very well financed, we're structured, we have redundancy of production supply with TSMC and Samsung, but it's how we build a framework through public funding and through private funding to be able to bring our product to the market inside private sector and military players. Because nobody before today here in the room also knew about Axelera. And now you guys know us.
Thank you. Alberto, your one action.
So not to disagree, but the truth is in the United States, they didn't make it with regulation and they didn't make it with consolidation. They compete every single day. Many companies die fighting in a very commercial war, and that's working. So I don't think going to a different space where a single company is going to do all is going to be the effective way. So I think competition is going to be good, but we need to see that the competitiveness takes to a better place. So people want to compete, and this is what was happening. There's something broken in the model that we have to fix, which I go back to the previous question about the demand. We are not generating the demand that we see in other markets, and I think that will foster the rest of the needs. Regulation is important, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's the only answer. So I think we have to just break this loop of not having enough demand, so all the startups really try to compete, but with really no big market to do it. But I think that would be my advice.
And finally, José.
I totally agree with Alain that one of the problems in Europe is the excess of bureaucracy and how slow we are in make everything. This should be changed. And in my opinion, this is changed with more structures, human structures in the line of private sector, private companies, and less with intervention of the governmental entities.
So to maybe bring it together, sorry, one last comment.
Just one small answer about the demand. In the US, initially, you don't have so much demand from the private sector. But with the national labs and with the military force in the US, Intel, AMD, NVIDIA build they demand. You understand? It's also why these companies are so strong, because they have the support from their government.
That's exactly what I tried to say.
No, indeed.
Thank you.
So maybe to put it together, the, let's say, 3 factors that we need to improve on is, of course, to, let's say, buy all of the demand, increase public expenditure, increase spending on these type of technologies, increase the speed in which they can be deployed, and leverage the strong ecosystem that we already have. And with that, thank you for my speakers for really sticking to the time. I'm not getting any angry words yet, and give a big round of applause to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.